come to order. This meeting was rescheduled from July 12th due to lack of quorum. This meeting is live streamed and recorded on YouTube. Beginning in May, we also are holding this meeting in person at City Hall Council Chamber. The Planning Commission is selected by and serves in an advisory role to the City Council regarding development of our city. To remind everyone, we changed our bylaws to allow for remote participation by any commissioner who has requested doing so due to a limiting circumstance in that month. So I want to introduce to you Elaine Richardson. This is Nathan Clark and Curtis Arnold, and I'm Mary Beth Green, and I'll lead this meeting. We may have Jackie. Rick, is Jackie online? No. Okay. All right, just let me know. So we have a quorum, barely. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, people, for coming and supporting the Planning Commission. Members of the administrative staff that are here is Planning and Codes Director Todd Stedman. We have Rick Rowe with IT, and we have our Secretary, Carol Winchester. All right, I'm going to open the public session. And at this time, you may speak on any topic that is not on our agenda. Do we have any partakers that would like to come to the podium? Okay. Also, I believe that anybody can call in. The number to call is 864-653-9886. All right. So if you'll let me know, Rick, if anybody does call, and I'll keep the public session open for a little bit. Is there any way for us to keep the feedback from buzzing? Aliens? Okay, so we're not sure what's causing that. All right. Okay. If there's other items on the agenda where you would like to speak, it will come up as the agenda shows us, so if you'll wait till then. All right. So the next agenda item are the adoption of the minutes. And our last Planning Commission meeting was on June the 14th, 2021. Do we have any comments, edits, questions? Hello.
For
the minutes.
for me.
Okay. What? Okay. Thought he was coming to get us. All right. So everybody's happy with the minutes so far. And apparently we'll do the special call meeting in August. So that works for me. All right then. So do I hear a motion about the minutes?
Mary Beth, I'll give you a motion. I reviewed the minutes, have no comments, and I'd like a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
All right, so I need a second. And Elaine is the second. So all those in favor, just by voice vote, say aye. Voice vote nay is if you don't accept. I believe it's unanimous because I'm not sure that Jackie is online yet. All right. The next item is the 2021 S15 Clemson Cottages Second Development Master Plan Review. Last time was the sketch plan. So who do we have to present? Not you? You? Oh, I'm sorry. So we have Todd Stedman will present.
Thank you, Chair. An application for the major subdivision was submitted by Mr. Philip Maloney in May of this year. As proposed, it's a 15.4 acre parcel of land located near Hunter Avenue or abutting Hunter Avenue. Proposed to be subdivided into a 20-lot residential development. The plans included 2 new public streets totaling approximately a quarter-mile in length. And although there will be no vehicular connection to the private street that serves the existing phase of Clemson Cottages, the The developer intends to install a pedestrian bicycle path north of the detention pond to provide a link to the proposed Selby Drive. As Mary Beth mentioned, the sketch plan review was conducted by the Planning Commission on June 14th, and this is the master plan review. There will be a subsequent review after this. This is the preliminary plat review. Due to the simplicity of the site conditions, it was pretty much a pasture that has been allowed to kind of go back to nature. And that's the fact that the developer's plans were really more detailed than what is required by the land development regulation. There are very few components of those. It does, however, contain the results of the tree survey, which was completed for the areas designated to be open space and the setback areas bordering neighboring parcels to the north. And that the development is subject to both the city open space and canopy coverage requirements, which will have to be addressed in specifics at the preliminary plat level, which is the next meeting. However, that the plan they show here exceeds the required open space. They just have not gotten to the point of identifying exactly what the tree canopy coverage will be, other than we know that it will meet the 25% or it cannot be improved. And they do show the proposed pedestrian bicycle linkage. As proposed, the original proposal showed the homes in the development oriented towards the new streets. This would have the backs of the property facing Hunter Avenue, and the developer proposed a berm and fence to create a screen for the view from Hunter Avenue looking into the rear of those properties. With the exception of a detention pond that serves both the proposed development and the existing phase 1 of Clemson Cottages, the parcel is undeveloped, and that there is a 66-foot power line right-of-way that crosses the parcel. And what is being proposed is a R20 single-family district. That's what the property is currently zoned, and that has an aerial view, and you can see that it's the power line cuts through the middle of the area. And that the R20, of course, requires lot sizes of 20,000 square feet. And the applicant is not requesting any change to zoning. The current zoning is R20. When we looked at the comprehensive plan, the parcel is just shown as part of a potential development area on the future land use map. It does not go into greater detail. Initially, the 2014 plan had included that area for medium density, medium to high density, I believe, and but that was changed in the adoption of the 2019 comprehensive plan. So that's the overview. A couple of things to point out that this project meets all the requirements of a master plan review, all the things that the land development regs say we must include. We have shared this drawing with our colleagues with the police department, the fire department, engineering, public works, and utilities. No departments have any concerns about the development as proposed, and by that I mean there's no impediments to that. There are three things. This is the existing conditions, which admittedly is difficult to read in small format. Elaine does have a larger version of this if you would like to see that, and it allows you to drill down a little bit on the tree inventory. There are a couple of things that still to be determined. There's which are not required at this level, but they will be coming at the next level. is the identification of the common open space area. They have a 3% requirement, which equals about a half an acre. The 25% canopy coverage, the location of fire hydrants, location and samples of the street lighting, and assuming they might want some sort of identifying monument sign or something at the intersection of Hunter Avenue and the street serving this neighborhood, that those would be things we will identify and discuss at the next meeting. I'd also like to point out that at the request of members of the Planning Commission, the applicant met with some of the neighbors to discuss the project and get some feedback. And as a result of that meeting, that they have developed an alternative plan as well. And it includes the homes that were having their back to Hunter Avenue now being faced on Hunter Avenue. And I have
Is there one available for the public?
I'm sorry, Mary Beth, I couldn't hear you.
Is there one available for the public to see?
Yes, I'll
We
put it up
can
right
share
now.
one, Todd.
We can share one if they need to.
Todd, we can share one, but it'll be a big one if you want to pass it on.
This is the what I have on the screen now, which I apologize to all those in the room that I've been in your seat,
They're all the same.
and I understand that the graphics are not ideal,
You have two of those.
but
We have three. Oh, yeah. Is that, do you mind picking that out?
if you can see that the homes here, here is the, yes.
Jill, do y'all want another one? I have one more we can share. Does anybody over there need one? Yeah. Yes.
It is.
It is.
Or the driveways to the back.
We didn't receive this until yesterday.
Todd, since I can't see that very well, are the driveways going to come to the rear of the house and not off of Hunter?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you, Elaine. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, if they're reorienting the houses to face Hunter, are the driveways going to come to the back of the house?
Correct. And so the Planning Commission has two options. You don't have to consider the second one. The applicant did this as a response to citizen requests, as I understand it. But I will allow the applicant to address how that came to be and shed more light on that for you. But you can see here is Hunter Avenue and the driveway, and these homes now are all accessed off of Hunter Avenue. There are 5 properties. In the original iteration, those all were accessed by a cul-de-sac that came down this way, and the proposal was to have a berm and a 6-foot fence along the avenue. So I'm proposing, at the applicant's request, I'm sharing both of these options for you, and that's the end of my report.
Okay, so you're done.
I am done.
All right. Commissioners, you get first dibs. Dr. Scott, Todd, or we can have the, do we want to wait until let Philip or whomever?
I would like to clarify that with Todd
Okay.
about the, and maybe the developer could do that, the access to those houses along Hunter, if they reorient the houses to face Hunter, so then there'll be 5 driveways? And
Correct.
You couldn't do that, so there would be back access houses to minimize the impact on Hunter?
Just so the feedback we received was.
Would you please come to the microphone? I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Philip Maloney, and yes, ma'am, it's really the feedback we received was, why wouldn't you put the homes, coming off of Hunter Avenue? And so that may eliminate a little bit more traffic coming out the road that would be created. And so we have 2 different plans, and mainly we kind of thought that initially there would be more of a benefit to have the new development, which will have a new name than Clemson Cottages too. It'll have a new name, and it would be a single entrance, 2 roads, and it would be kind of an isolated community. So some of the thinking in our feedback, and again, if my feedback is wrong, then I'm certainly not willing to stay here. That we're just providing them with an alternate plan based on that, because they said, why not have it come off of Hunter Avenue? So that's what's going on. So no back alley that would have them with driveways.
Thank you.
Developer, do you want to address some more issues, or is that? We'll have a chance for you to ask questions.
Yes, I'm Chuck Reichert, Reichert Consulting in Greenville. Like Philip said, the initial plan was to keep everything within the subdivision and have one access point. I think Mr. Arnold requested that we meet with the homeowners. So when we submitted this master plan, we hadn't had time to meet with them yet, schedule-wise and trying to get everybody together. And so we met with them like 2 weeks ago, I think, a week and a half ago. And majority of the feedback that we got was, why aren't you? They didn't want to see the backs of lots. They wanted to see the driveways. They wanted to see the houses along Hunter Avenue. So we said, okay, we'll take a look at that. Yes, we did eliminate it. So we eliminated that one street. We lost 1 lot. Okay, we're down to 19 lots this way instead of 20. But, we oriented the way that the residents, we spent an hour and 45 minutes with them that night. We came to meet with them. And again, unless I misread, the majority of the people are saying, we want, we don't want to see the back of these lots. We want to see your driveways facing our driveways on Hunter. Why aren't we seeing your houses? And so we looked at that and said, we talked to Todd, talked to Art, can we reconfigure this thing, what the residents are looking for? And so that's what we did. Like I said, so there'll be, I think, 5 lots, if I remember right, that'll face Hunter. We'll have a sidewalk along Hunter, and their driveways will come off of Hunter. So that cuts down to 14 lots coming out of our street. Because I was concerned about, a bunch of houses, coming out of the one street right there. So that cuts that down to 14. And then we'll have the 5 that'll have drives that will come off of Hunter, and they'll face, the house on the other side of Hunter. And that's the feedback that we got, and that's why we did it. So, we lost a lot. We're comfortable, perfectly honest, we're comfortable with either plan. We think either plan is a good plan, but, from what the residents, were concerned about, we said, well, we'll take a look at it and see, so we can go either way, but, we wanted to present this, and, like I said, we lost 1 lot, but we've got, those lots facing Hunter, and again, the feedback we got from everybody was, they didn't want to see the backs, they didn't want to see a berm, they didn't want to see a fence, they wanted to see houses facing their houses, so that's why we did.
Any questions?
And which lot did you lose?
Well,
I'm just looking at
that cul-de-sac that came down in there was 1 more lot that we lost, just because our open space increased by, I think, close to an acre. But there was just 1 more lot that was on that cul-de-sac that came down. We just couldn't fit all those lots in there with the 100-foot lot width required by the city for the R20 zoning. 20,000 square feet, so you just lose one lot just because it just physically doesn't work.
So you're not sure which, I mean, we're looking at a map and it's,
And their number, the houses are numbered.
Yeah, I mean, it's that, when the first layout, that cul-de-sac that came down there, it was one of the lots that was on the, I guess, the west side of that cul-de-sac. We lost one of those lots.
oh, okay. Righty.
I have a question about the lines on this one, where the dotted lines around the house and then the solid lines.
The dotted lines are the setback lines, okay, from zoning. 10-foot side setback, 25-foot front, and 40-foot rear.
Can I go ahead and ask my tree question? Please. So I'm looking at lots 6 and 7, which one of them abuts Ms. Cooper's property and the other one abuts Robertson subdivision.
6 and 7.
And that's why I was asking about the dotted lines, because there are 3 trees that are very close to the property line on that side, and 2 of them are actually outside of that setback line. So my question is, can you put that fencing around those 3 trees and not disturb the roots?
Yeah, I mean, I think that those lots are deep enough that we shouldn't have to bother with those trees.
So this, I understand this was a pasture, so a lot of it was clear anyhow. And then along
Yes,
the
ma'am.
other side, I see a lot of pretty good sized trees coming down by the common area and the sewer easement and all
Right.
of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And those will not be disturbed either.
Not unless there has to be a utility. We'll have to run sanitary sewer up through there to get through there. We're going to have to run some storm drain to get to the detention basin. So there's going to have to be some utilities ran through there. But other than that, there's, and where exactly it's going to go, I can't tell you right now. But we got to get sewer through there and storm drain through there. So there could be some trees that are impacted by that. But we'll still have to meet the requirements for the canopy coverage.
Okay, so I'm a bit of a tree hugger, and I would like you to do everything you can to
Right.
maximize saving the big trees that you
Yes,
have
ma'am.
on that, but they're treasures.
Right, I understand.
Got a couple of questions for you. When you had your neighborhood meeting, how many of the residents actually participated? I was just curious whether it was 50%. I'm not trying to be too fine.
There were, 10 people there, probably?
So you felt like that was a reasonable representation of the neighborhood. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure how far over into the Hunter Avenue development that you invited people over.
I mean, there were people that were on some of the back streets, and obviously most people on Hunter Avenue right there were there. Again, I think,
So everyone
We
will,
don't know where everyone lives.
Okay, I understand.
They were all invited.
Just trying to get a feel for
Yeah.
how much participation you had.
yeah.
so they were all invited, right? Everybody's, right?
I mean,
Well, I was in charge of email.
yeah.
Okay.
Develop invited.
Yeah,
I let some people know that I know in the neighborhood and said, please spread the word. And so I'm not sure if everybody was informed, but we got to the people that we knew and said, please let people know that we're going to be here this evening, right?
Sure.
This certain evening
Okay.
of the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just trying to gauge what kind of participation you had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have residents here who could tell us which of those 2 versions they prefer?
I guess we're gonna, if you don't mind, we're gonna hear from the residents now.
That's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. All right. I don't know who was first. I believe you, yes, you were. If you'll come forward and sign in.
It's on.
It's on the podium? Is it on the podium? Yeah, we change it up every time. No. It makes sense to have it. Thank you. And then tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is Ümit. Good afternoon. My name is Ümit Yılmaz. I'm the owner of the lot at the corner of Pendleton Road and Hunter Avenue, adjacent to this development.
What's your address?
249 Pendleton Road.
Okay. All right.
We had a good communication with the developers. They met us in the neighborhood, and then we discussed the previous plan, and they made comments, and then some of the comments were taken. So we're appreciative to their changes. But I have to make a couple of points. First of all, the subdivision ordinance, I believe that's like section 30:15:3 refers to the lots that were included in the previous plan between two roads. Those are not permitted according to the subdivision ordinance. And there are two exceptions, and then those exceptions are not applicable to this. So the developer made a comment about this thing when I brought this up. The Hunter Avenue is a state road, so then the DOT actually doesn't want driveways connected to the state road, but that's not really a big factor because Hunter Avenue has already single-family houses connected with their driveways. So check that ordinance. I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's section 15 or 30. And then the second alternative, I just briefly look at this thing because this was not uploaded to the website. I just read over here is much better than the first one in a couple of areas. First of all, if you look at this plan, you remove this cul-de-sac from here that was serving these 5 houses. So that means like a 50% reduction in the impervious surface and then road surface included in that neighborhood development, 50%, almost. So that's a good improvement. The other thing that I just want to make a comment is that it can be even better if they provide a back alley, which Clemson has in some of the neighborhoods, like Patrick Square and some others, and then feed the garages from back alley, and kids can play and then trash bins go to the back alley, and then that's actually the space is large open space in the detention pond. So then we won't need to actually have any driveways connected to the hotel if they do that. So recent examples that you can see in Patrick Square, some of the other developments and quality developments in Clemson, there are like houses about the sidewalks with the nice porches and facades. That is a good contribution to the neighborhood, and then also, in my opinion, it is a very good marketing strategy. So they can actually sell these houses better because those are going to be much nicer houses. And then the third thing that I just want to comment is, in general, not necessarily related to this development, is we've been seeing a lot of developments around us, and then these developments are compartmentalizing themselves, and then just fortifying themselves, and then isolating themselves, which is not really good for Clemson. So we would like to actually see integration of the new developments with the existing, and then respect each other. So that's the last comment that I have. Thank you.
So you're saying that this subdivision is isolated from other.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I couldn't
What
understand.
I'm saying is that recent developments have, they are not gated communities,
Right.
but they fortify themselves with fences and then gates. Not necessarily gates, because most of the streets are given to the city and it becomes like a public streets instead of private streets. But they still put fences in the backyards to the public, and then it is not creating a good impression or a contribution to the community. So the better thing is to actually integrate those things into existing communities. So I don't think it's going to be really a good strategy in many ways, but it's very common. It is easy to do it, and then it is there's a know-how that the developers have, then they don't want to actually invent new things, and then they keep repeating the same thing. So then we're seeing all the developers have fences, and then they isolate themselves, as if like they are creating a kind of enclave there, which is not even the case because the roads are public, and then there's no gate. So it's better to actually unfence these and then kind of really connect the frontage of at least like a part of the developments to the existing to display, well, this new development is actually respecting the existing.
So you like the orientation of the houses toward Hunter
Yes, I do.
and no fence?
No fence, exactly.
And that's
Because
that's the
fence is
fence.
like, fence is turning your back to the neighborhood.
Okay.
And then, remember I made a comment that it would be even better if they put the access to these houses,
And an
I mean
alley.
vehicular access, through not that street, but an alley.
Right.
So that would be even better. So those are the comments that I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another speaker from the public? Please come up. Yes, I believe he's next, and then Mrs. Cooper, and then Mrs. Whitworth. Did you have your hand? Oh, you didn't? Okay.
My name's Peter Schran. I'm a little hoarse, but I live on Hunter Avenue near the intersection with the power lines. And question for the developer is that I understand you lost a lot. Do you mean the entire development has one less lot than it used to? Okay. And I'm not too happy that this was not put online until yesterday. And if you go online, you cannot find a decent resolution, illustration of the changes. I don't understand the motivation for denying us access to a clear picture of what they're going to develop. It's so easy to put it online and it's not there. You heard Mr. Stedman said it was put up there yesterday, I believe. And I don't know what the intention was of not putting it up there. I think if they really want to keep us informed like they say they do, the developers, they would make this information available. I don't know what they're holding back. And, there's also a discussion of the street meeting, and they said they made changes based on the feedback from the street meeting. Well, there's no minutes of that meeting. We don't know what was discussed. I don't know if the developer,
I'm sorry.
I don't know if the developer just, there's no minutes of that meeting. We don't know what was discussed. I don't know if they actually are making changes based on feedback or not, because we don't know what was discussed. He says there was feedback. I don't know. Who knows? 8 people there. We don't know who they were.
Were you at the meeting?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
Actually, I don't live there yet. I live in Atlanta. I bought a house there. I wasn't able to make it.
Okay.
If it was online, I would have watched. But it wasn't.
Okay.
So, and I think by fact that this information was not even available for us to look at, I think it kind of nullifies the plan for the moment. So I think they are.
It nullifies?
I don't think. I don't think it should be approved so quickly, based on the lack of information until, at least for me tonight. So,
If I could offer just a little
Yes,
bit
sir.
of an explanation, that when the developer contacted us, I believe it was yesterday, saying that they had a proposed alternate version and submitted it, and I had a chance to look at it and recognize that there was a substantial omission in the in the alternative plan, which, and Mr. Maloney, and it may have been the day before, he had, he asked, how do we proceed? And that I said that we could present it to the Planning Commission for them to consider and to be aware of. The vote tonight is not an approval.
I understand.
It advances it to another level, so there's another month of citizen input and review. But I asked the developer, there were no sidewalks on Hunter Avenue, and they resubmitted a drawing and delivered the printed copies of it today. And so that this is a little unusual, and we certainly, the Planning Commission doesn't have to consider it. And they're not voting to approve it tonight, but it was an opportunity to demonstrate at the request of the developer that he had done what the Planning Commission had requested, which was to meet with the citizens, and this was the result of that meeting. What the Planning Commission chooses to do with it is up to them.
I would add that I approve the sir who suggested alleyways. It sounds like a great idea. Yeah. Having driveways down Hunter Lane doesn't alleviate traffic or anything. I mean, you know, from my house, I would live right across from there. So,
Okay, do you need more time?
no, sir. No, ma'am.
That's all
Sorry.
right. It's okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. All right, Mrs. Cooper. I know Mrs. Cooper from volleyball.
Good evening. Thanks for listening to us. I just have two questions. If you look on the map here, lot 6, all of a sudden the setback is a lot smaller than all the other.
You're saying lot 6?
It's because this is the side. This is the rear.
Right.
I think that's why they.
Yeah, that's considered a side setback, and that's considered the rear, because this is the rear of the lot.
Even you have all this room, why couldn't you make it the same?
Well, I'm just going by what the regulations call for. I think that's the side
And
setback.
that's the only lot, well, we here too.
Right.
So, that goes right.
I can't hear you.
I mean, I guess we could. The house,
You don't know.
they're not going to disturb anything. But that's just saying that we can't build. You know, but the developer's going to put their
I'm
houses
sorry, but we
close to
can't
the road as
hear
possible.
what they're discussing, and
But this
so
goes right.
can we have this discussion over a microphone? Is there one?
Ms. Cooper, they're asking if we could have the discussion with the microphone so everybody could hear.
I'm sorry, our podium is
Sorry.
not bigger.
And I'm Jamie
We're all
Turner.
doing the best we can here, and who are you, sir?
I'm Jamie Turner. I'm with Ridgewater Engineering and Surveying.
You're an engineer?
Yes, ma'am. I'm with the company that designed
Okay.
this. And she's asking on lot number 6, there's a side setback that's, if you look at this, it may look like it should be a rear setback, but there's, you know, it is a side setback. That's why it's closer to the property line.
Can you tell me the measurements?
Well, that line is 119 feet.
No, I mean here, the side setback.
Yeah, that's 10. They're
That's 10, and all of this is 40.
right.
So,
Yeah, 10 and 40 and 25.
so this is the only one here, which does not get the 40 setback. Have you been to those lots? Have you looked at those? Did you look at the trees, how tall they are?
I did. My surveyor did, but I did
I
not.
invite you to come. I take you in the woods.
But I mean,
Tell you that.
I'm sure there's something we can do here to help with that. I mean, because again, our house is not even anywhere near that property line. So I'm sure there's something we could look at to move that over to help you out there.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because once it's done, it's done.
Right.
And I talked to my insurance company already about it, you know, about the trees which are going to die because pine trees don't have the drip radius like big oak trees have.
I need everybody to just let these two people talk. If you have another conversation, if you can step where you don't get caught up in these
Okay.
50,000 microphones,
Okay.
you guys are okay. We've just got some other conversations, and it's so hard to hear in here because everything's bouncing everywhere. So if you have to talk to someone other than at the podium, if you could go somewhere where we don't hear it.
Okay.
But to answer her question, we could accommodate that. I don't see a
Okay.
problem with that.
Okay, and I have one more question.
Is that clear to you and to the other guys and to, okay, everything's clear. Okay, so we have, you're happy with this? This is to protect your trees?
Right, well, I wondered why there's only a side setback which is only 10 feet and the others are 40.
Okay,
So that seems not equal here.
okay, so they're gonna work on that. That's good.
So
Yeah.
can you summarize exactly what you're going to do?
I'm sorry. Do you know where do I need to show you where she's talking about so it makes
Yeah,
more
I
sense?
saw that sketch up there.
Just so make sure everybody's clear.
Okay.
This is considered the side. This is the rear, and that's why we have a side setback. So, I mean, we could, I don't know if we're gonna come over 40, but we could come over maybe another 10 feet.
So these were the three trees I was talking about,
Right.
that if we could put,
And again,
they're hardwoods.
right, and you know, based on what the house is, that's not gonna get disturbed with construction. I'm not sure what the homeowner will do when he moves in there. He can choose to do whatever he wants. But we could accommodate that.
Okay.
here with it.
Is that sufficient? Okay.
Yeah, and I have a question. The lot down there is not level. It goes downhill. You see it from Hunter Road. It goes slightly uphill. Are they going to level it all out and then build like they did with just about the other lot that had a little,
Well, at this point, we've not done a grading plan, and so it's hard for me to say exactly how long we've done it until we ask.
because you could have a house up here and a house down there, the way the land is.
Right, when we design, we try to eliminate as much, grading and cutting as possible, leave less dirt, that's more dirt we're going to cost,
So you don't know yet how you're going to work with that.
until we do a full design.
Have you been up there to the lot?
I've not been on this particular.
Please come and look at it so you know what we're talking about.
I've been there, I've been around it, I've just not walked the entire property. I'm familiar with the property. I'm just not.
From the picture, which,
Well, I physically lived out there, we did phase 1 too, so
okay.
I was out there during that.
Well, see, Mr. Maloney visited me when he first started. So I just want to see, it doesn't look like it's just one level ground because the other property, there's this slope down where the little apartments are, the student housing. And when it rains a lot, it's a mud hole down this way. So I don't know, it's not that steep, but I don't know how the grading is going to go, how it will look like.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, I mean, we welcome new neighbors. There's nothing we can do. We can't prevent it, but we want it as good looking as it can be. So we get good neighbors. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So to summarize, your cut and fill calcs haven't been done yet until you do the
Yes, sir.
final design?
Okay. All right, Ms. Whitwell.
I'm Kathy Whitwell. I live on 212 Hunter Avenue. I'm signing in, so. Just concerning that subject about the water runoff or the grading or whatever. Right now, we're getting a lot of water that's coming right in front of our house onto Hunter from the work that y'all done in the other on cottage, the other cottages.
The
So
other,
yeah.
the first one.
Right.
So you're
And I know
having-
they've got a water retention pond, but they need to have some more work done to make sure he's gonna take care of that, because it's coming out right in front of our house, 212. You can see the little trail where it comes out, comes over the road, and it looks like a river going down the road. So I'm hopeful that will be all taken care of. But I was at the meeting, and there were probably, I think about probably 12 to 15 people, 12 to 15 people that were at the meeting. And the one consensus that we all agreed on was that no one liked the idea of the street coming out onto Hunter. And because Hunter, where it connects with Pendleton Road is going down a hill, and there's a little curve. And so it's very hard to get out off of Hunter onto Pendleton Road right now, just with the number of people we have now. So it could be more of a dangerous situation to have 20 more families coming out onto Hunter and then coming out from Hunter to Pendleton Road. So it was a consensus of all of us that we didn't think that would be the safest plan, to have the road coming out onto Hunter.
Okay.
So I don't know if, I'm not opposed to the houses, those 5 houses that are facing Hunter. I'm not opposed to having those houses facing Hunter to have their driveway coming out on Hunter. I'm not opposed to that, but maybe the other houses that are in there, the remaining 15, could that street not go on out onto Old Stone Church Road?
Instead of going directly to Hunter.
Go out on Old Stone Church Road instead of onto Hunter.
So they would, okay.
So there would be 5 driveways facing, of the houses facing Hunter. That would be fine. It would be facing our driveways. But the remaining 14, 15 houses, that shoot them out onto Old Stone Church Road.
Okay.
That was the consensus of everyone, especially just not coming out onto Hunter Avenue.
So then it was Mr. Maloney or?
Both were there.
Both were there.
Right.
Okay, and so you heard this? Okay.
Yes, they heard this.
Okay, so shall we ask them about it?
Sure.
Alrighty. So, are you through with your comments?
Those were.
You can come back.
Okay.
Let us address this with
Those were the 2 issues.
with a
I had.
microphone because it's being recorded.
Sure. Yes.
I try not to think about that, but.
Okay.
All right, can you address this consensus of this group? I appreciate it.
I think the how it's stated as far as the consensus that this goes out on Old Stone Church Road, I don't know if that's a consensus that we said, hey, we all agree that we're going to do this, because we can't do that. This is something where the property does not have access to Old Stone Church Road. So I think there's a major desire not to have that come off of Hunter Avenue. However, it's a state road. It's a piece of property that's zoned R20 that is right there off of Hunter Avenue. There's another development that you'd have to tear down to get through to go off of Old Stone Church Road. And even to come off of Pendleton Avenue, we would not be able to come off of Pendleton Avenue either. So I don't see a solution to be able to handle that desire.
Okay, all right, thank you. Does anybody have a rebuttal to what he's just said? Another idea? Would you like to come to the podium for us so we can hear you and record you?
I want to be a resident.
I don't think so. It doesn't bother me. Oh, you're not a resident of Hunter, but you're a resident of Clemson.
I live in Clemson.
Oh, thank you. That makes you part of the gang, I
No,
guess.
everything affects me.
Well, I'm glad you're concerned about someone else's neighborhood. That doesn't
Well,
happen a lot.
I'm right up the road, and,
Are you Mrs. Misseri? Okay, I said it right.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Elaine Masseri. I live at 204 Wren Street in Clemson. I don't understand why there is not access on Old Stone Church Road. I sat at Presley's Auto Parts the other day because a squirrel had chewed through my gas line, and I was looking at, yeah, lot. Anyway, I was looking at it, and trucks have gone through there, presumably from Old Stone Church. You can see the tracks to do that development, the back development that backs up to Old Stone Church. There is enough road there. Yeah, I mean, if you've been putting trucks on that property, well, if it's not theirs, then they've been on somebody else's property, presumably. But you can see where there's tracks going just enough to get a road, and it goes straight down to an inside driveway in that development. I mean, it's a clear sight. There's an inside road that's somehow going in those houses, and it's a straight shot through there from
Are you
Old Stone.
talking about the first development or the second development?
Well, I guess it was the first development that backs up to Old Stone Church. Yes. But you could do an access down through there.
Okay.
That's all I mean, to me, you can see right through there.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone from the developer that would like to answer this or rebut it?
Okay, I think what she's talking about is the power line right away. Because we have a fence along Old Stone Church Road, along the backs of the lots. That fence stops at the power line right away. And that's where our property also stops. It's in the center line of that power line right away. So if there's trucks coming in, it's probably due to power. We're not accessing through there. Because that's the power, it's a 66-foot power line right away through there. And our fence along Old Stone Church Road had to stop at the power line right away because we could not put a fence in there. So the only access that's coming into there would be into that power line right away. And again, we own to the center line of it, we own 33 feet, but you cannot put a road in there. Okay, so anybody who's coming in there would be the power company. So we physically have no access to Old Stone Church Road from our property.
Is that along Stanberry Avenue,
I'm
Stanberry
sorry,
Street?
ma'am?
Is it along Stanberry Street? That power's right adjacent to Stanberry?
I don't know which street.
That's
Yes,
end
ma'am.
of- so it's
Yes,
right
yes,
on.
ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, that Stanberry Street was a private road for the first phase, but it had to be outside of the power line right away also. Okay, so the power line right away is adjacent to that.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for answering that. Do we have any further comments? Okay, thank you. We're all neighbors, you know.
Yes, I am Amy Taylor. I grew up on Hunter Avenue and moved back to Hunter Avenue about 3 years ago. My address is 217 Hunter Avenue. Bought the house right beside my parents, and I have a little 3-year-old. I do not like that our neighborhood is changing, but I know that it's inevitable, it's going to happen. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is I would love to see a road access going out to Yellowstone Church, but I don't think that's going to happen. The third thing is our road can be a little dangerous. We've got some people that drive in and out really quickly. The entrance we've already talked about to their neighborhood is in the most dangerous area of the neighborhood, on the curve. That
Pendleton.
No, on Hunter Avenue.
Oh, okay.
But I will say that once we talked to the developers, I felt a little bit better because they're going to be clearing out that area where there's you can come around the curve and, if you're walking, I'm always afraid to be on the right side of the road, facing traffic because of the way people come around that curve. So I will have to say, if everything has to move forward and the entrance is going to be on Hunter Avenue, I do like the idea of the houses facing Hunter Avenue. I do like the idea of the alley being at the back behind the houses, and I would like to see that nice sidewalk that would make Hunter Avenue, make it a little bit safer. It'd be a nice addition to our neighborhood there's lots of walkers. So if we had a really nice concrete sidewalk that went all the way up Hunter Avenue, I think that would be a nice feature for us walkers, for my little girl, when I think about us walking, up that hill and around the curve. And so...
Isn't that included in the plan?
Yes, it is. It is.
So you're...
I like that
kudos.
idea.
You're giving them some kudos.
I am, because I don't like the idea of everything changing. I know it can't stop that. But I think a nice sidewalk with hopefully beautiful homes facing us, and not the backs of houses that might be neglected, would just make our neighborhood look nicer. But it's got to change. I want to look as nice as it can look, and make it safer for us, because we do have some teenagers that come down around the corner, and honestly, having some houses on that other side of the street might slow some people down. But anyway, I don't want to see the development, but I know it's going to happen, and I just want to make sure, I like, what I like. Houses facing Hunter, an alley behind it, like this gentleman said, a nice concrete sidewalk. And I guess that's it.
Okay. Alrighty. And everything we're saying is public and it's reported and live streamed. I think somebody alluded to the fact that no one would know what we're talking about, but it's all there, so you can go back and point that out and say, well, this is where Mrs. Cooper said, or one of the developers. So that's all there, taped forever, I guess. So, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak or react to what's going on so far? Okay. Oh, please.
I believe you've said you're going to put sidewalks all along Hunter now, where
The sidewalks just along our frontage.
okay, is it possible to at least extend
That
to
was a city
Pendleton Road?
requirement along our frontage.
Do what?
The sidewalk just runs along our property.
Right.
It does not go up to Pendleton.
Is it possible to extend it to Pendleton?
We're not the owner of that other property.
All right. That's interesting.
If the owner approved it, would you do it?
Probably, I'll just be honest with you, I don't think so.
Okay. It just makes sense to me if you're going to put a
I understand,
sidewalk in.
it's a isolated
safety.
island of sidewalks, we see
Yeah.
that all the time when things are developed, but, when another property gets developed someday, which it probably will be, they can do sidewalks.
So I think Curtis Arnold has comment.
Yeah, I've got a question for engineering.
Okay.
A lot of discussion about the alleyways. I heard one comment saying, well,
Do you need the engineer back up?
yes.
If you could, you can answer. Okay, thank you, sorry.
And I just, I've heard a lot of comments about the alleyways, and I was just looking about what that would do to the rear of the property as far as, I guess it would take some more space off the rear of the property. It also requires you to have to build a roadway that would be worthy of, I guess, access. I don't know whether we end up picking up garbage from the front That's been a discussion point in the past about the alleyway. If you do that, is it going to have to be built to standards for the city?
The city has a alleyway standard. I think it's like 30-foot right away, and then I think it's, I forget the width of it, but, you know, in our discussions with the residents, alley never came up. It was all, put your driveways out, we don't want to see the backs of the houses. You know, the alleys, this is the first time we've heard about the alleys. Okay, when we met with the homeowners, alleyway was never mentioned.
So
It
is
was-
the alley then just for access for the people driving, or they're, you know, if they're gonna,
Well, I mean,
And
one
not
of
a
his
trash
comments
can. Trash.
was, you know, we're eliminating some street, now we're putting street back in again. One of his comments was, you're eliminating some pervious area by eliminating that street. Put the alleyway back in, now you're putting more pervious area back in. I mean, alleyways, we're not in favor of an alleyway, okay? What we were told at the community meeting was, face your houses on Hunter. We want the driveways coming off Hunter. You do an alleyway, you know, you've also got problems with topography, the power line right away, because the alleyway is going to have to basically be a U, and it's going to, I think it's going to create more problems, because it's going to, you know, it's going to have to be a circular type thing, so people can come in from either direction, you know, because it's not a dead end type street. So you literally are creating another street. You're going to have two access points for it. I mean, we would prefer to do it the way we laid it out, have the 5 houses there, 5 driveways coming out in the Hunter, you know, versus 2 alleyway driveways. I think, you know, and that's what we heard at that community meeting we had. There's no mention of an alleyway. It's get rid of the backyards, have your driveways, your houses facing our driveways and our houses. There's no, you know, so that's what we heard and what we did.
okay, all right. Does anybody want to come up and speak to that, because you were, okay, if you'll come to the podium, you don't have to tell us your name again.
Well, I just want to make a comment that I just encourage the developer to go to Patrick Square and see the alleyways within the Clemson city, within the city of Clemson, so they can be inspired from those alleys. So the alleys are not supposed to be paved 30 feet within the right of way. So the paved area will be very limited and narrow. It's not a street; it's alley. So there's a lot of exceptions when you build the alleys or differences between alleys and streets. But they eliminated that road, which is positive. But I'm not saying that road can be regarded an alley. Alley has a different realm, different parameters, different characteristics.
And the reason that you want an alley is,
The front part of the house, well, first it's going to eliminate 5 driveways connected to Hunter Avenue, which is, Hunter Avenue is regarded as a state road, and then there's an argument that DOT doesn't allow curb cuts, which is
doesn't allow what, sir?
curb cuts or like
Curb.
connections, which I didn't verify that or look at the ordinance or regulations related with DOT. But what I know is that subdivision ordinance doesn't allow houses between 2 streets. So then the modified plan that they come up with, new one, doesn't have that problem. But the first one had like a house, 6 houses were sandwiched between 2 streets, Hunter Avenue and then the cul-de-sac.
Right.
And then removing that cul-de-sac was good. But then the only thing that I just want to say is that alleyway doesn't mean a street paved like 24 feet or 30 feet right away. And then if they have the right of way that is required 30 feet, then there's a wide open space behind that towards the detention pond. They have a lot of room to do it. That's all.
And that is in lieu of putting, I'm sorry, I'm dense here. That's in lieu of putting in a driveway going straight to Hunter?
Yeah,
Is
so
the
then
access-
they don't need to actually put the driveways, and they don't need to even put any driveways because the alleys can be adjacent to their property line. they can have just an opening connection to the alleyway. And there are good examples in Clemson.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to respond to that, the developer?
So I think we're going down a path of a person's suggestion to put in an alley, you know, and the plan that we've created has the driveways coming off of Hunter Avenue, absolutely, because of the concern of the backs. And we have a concrete walkway or sidewalk going down there. Again, this is R20. If we go to Patrick Square, it is not R20. If we go to the Villages of Berkeley, it is not R20. So as I've seen, you know, the alleyways, there hasn't, I mean, I'm not sure. Uman, is there an R20 example in Clemson?
It's not prohibited.
No, it's not. I know that, but it's just because part of R20 is kids playing in the backyard. And so that's what makes it, you know, if you take the driveway off of Hunter Avenue, we've got some pretty big backyards there. I look at that and see a lot of fun. If you put an alley back there, that just doesn't, that kind of interrupts, you know, where you can kind of put your dog and your kids and you're out there playing. So there, but I really believe that we're talking about an opinion. I just shared my opinion. He shared his opinion.
Exactly.
But really the reality is we're just talking about this plan that we've identified, you know, based on, okay, we're not going to have the backs of the houses. We're going to put the front of 5 homes on coming off of Hunter Avenue, be integrated into the community. And so that's the plan that I think we should discuss.
Okay. Wow. Any other comments? Mr. Schran.
Yes, Peter Schrader. I don't think it matters whether it's R20 or R8 for putting an alleyway back there. I lived in other cities where large house, it was only large houses, large neighborhoods that had alleyways. It wasn't necessarily restricted to high-density neighborhoods. And there was some discussion about how alleyways were never mentioned at the neighborhood meeting. Well, nobody ever thought of it. So I think if somebody had thought of it then, it would have been better received, well received. So thank you for bringing it up.
Okay.
Alleyways sound great, and it really cuts down the speed of the traffic, I think, and also takes the traffic off Hunter Avenue, makes Hunter Avenue more attractive, not just a line of garages and driveways.
Not just a what?
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
Not just a line of garages and driveways.
Okay.
It'd be a very attractive addition to the neighborhood.
All right.
Thank you.
So are we about coming near to, is there any comment that you have, Todd, as far as comparing this to Patrick Square? Because Patrick Square and Village of Berkeley, are they not both planned developments, so they're not a typical zone? For Clemson, they're whatever we worked out.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a different entity altogether. So before comments that I have heard from either the commission or the public were the interest in addressing the 3 trees again, just on opposite of Mrs. Cooper's property line. Adjusting the building envelope, which is the dash line that the developer showed for lot 6, which would provide Ms. Cooper additional buffer. Actually, neither the developer or the planning commission or I have the ability to change the setbacks. The setbacks are what they are. But the developer could draw in a modified building envelope, and we could note that in your approval to say that lot 6 has a modified building envelope.
Okay.
There was a question that hasn't been addressed about the detention pond failing, and that there's some overflow, heavy rains. I'm sure we will look into that. And then the obviously the discussion about the desire for no vehicular access off Hunter Avenue, which I believe has been addressed and kind of dismissed as an option. And then the last item is the discussion about an alleyway. But those are the items that I see is under discussion, and that the proposals you have, one of them has the houses facing Hunter without an alleyway, and the other has a roadway back there, but the houses back up to Hunter Avenue. I think those are the two options the developer has presented tonight.
Do we need to vote on
Yes.
all of those specifics and which ones that we agree with, or?
It's up to the planning commission, Mary Beth, but I think that what is required is the planning commission vote to advance this and advance it with any recommendations or requests that you have. And it could be as simple as, if you feel like that the project is far enough along to vote to say we approve of the master plan as presented with the following recommendations or requests. And they could be to some of the issues that we just talked about, or anything else that the planning commission wants to add. But then vote on that, and then the developer will come back at the next meeting with the request for what will be their final approval from the planning commission.
Okay, so, we have two choices, houses facing Hunter and not facing. So I think we need to, seems to me we should address that, because that changes the other things except for the tree setback. And then once we do that, then we should consider I think, mentioning the protection of the trees with the additional setback. Can we request that? You're saying that it's not required, but can we request that they consider or show us the next plan with the extra 10 feet? Okay, so what is it we need to say about trees?
Elaine, correct me if I'm wrong, and Phil and Chuck and everybody, but my understanding is there were two issues. Is there are 3 of the hardwood trees over 8 inches in diameter that are, 2 of them are in the rear of lot 6, and 1 is in the rear of lot 7. That the request was to use tree protection measures during the development of the site, and then in addition to that, to expand the building envelope for lot 6 to incorporate that hardwood tree. Yeah, to modify the building envelope for lot 6 to accommodate that tree.
Okay.
I think those were the issues related to the trees. Everything else related to the facing Hunter Avenue or not.
And the detention pond. Okay, so I guess, do we want to try to get a consensus on whether or not we want to consider the plan to have the houses facing Hunter, or are we content with the houses as they've been presented last time? Are we on board with facing Hunter and not their backs? Or is that pretty much how we all feel? So if we can settle that one, then we can move on to the rest, and then vote. Do y'all, who does not want the houses oriented toward the neighborhood, the new neighborhood? Are you all okay with what has been presented? The developer has showed us an alternative to put the houses houses facing Hunter rather than the back. Is that okay? So we start there. And then, so since we need to vote on moving this forward, are you all okay with the next item, which was the particular trees? So Elaine, can you tell us that was lot 6 and 7? So the developer understands which trees we're talking about?
Yeah, there, I can tell you, I mean, the numbers are here, what, 1367, 1365, and 1364.
Okay.
On the tree.
Was that recorded clearly? Okay. All right, so now, the detention pond failing that was mentioned about the rushing water down Hunter Avenue, can we request that be looked at, because that is most likely coming from the first set of cottages? Would you like to respond to that?
I'm not sure, because the discharge from the detention pond goes into the creek that runs behind Hunter. So I'm not sure where this water is she's talking about, because the detention pond, its discharge pipe doesn't even go towards Hunter Avenue.
Okay.
It goes into the creek that runs behind Hunter.
Okay.
So I'm you know, we'll be glad to take a look at it, but I'm not sure where
Okay,
this water.
I think Mrs. Whitwell is going to come and explain it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all's willingness to go back and forth, but we need it on the microphone because Kelly has to double check all our recordings so that she can have good minutes.
We never had this problem until the first cottages were done.
Okay, can you be specific? I think he's not clear on exactly what the problem is, or maybe I'm not clear.
Okay. That land in front of us is a hill.
Okay.
But
And you're at which?
212.
212, okay?
And we never had that issue before until after the Clemson cottages were built.
Okay.
And you can see it's actually made a path.
So you can show,
Yes,
if he
definitely.
wants to come see the path, you can see it.
Right.
Because we had, what, a 500-year flood some years back, and you didn't have that problem.
Right.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. We haven't had that issue.
I have a friend who's watched a horse wash away, so,
And Amy lives down right at the end of the street, in front of the creek.
okay.
And she verified, and we told Philip that at the
Okay.
meeting.
Okay,
Did we? Yes.
all right,
Okay.
so maybe Philip and you all will discuss it. Okay, thank you.
And Mary Beth, I'd like to make a recommendation to kind of add into that particular part. I'd like to recommend to the developer that we take engineering out and walk the property, look not only at the flooding issues here, but also ensure that they're totally familiar with what's out there.
And who is we?
Yes, sir. I think
But besides him, who's the other we? We's more than one person. Who would be walking with him?
No, well, I mean, he can ask the neighbors to come and walk with him, but I think he personally needs to go look at the property and verify what's going on out there.
Let me clarify, I've been on that property. I've not walked every inch of the
Oh, I
interior of the
understand.
property, but I designed phase 1, we surveyed this phase 2. I'm familiar with the property, I've just not been to every ins and outs of the entire
No.
Are you
property.
talking about the pathway of the water?
Well, no, I think we had some earlier discussion that it alluded to the fact he hadn't walked all of the property. And now we're hearing some other issues that are on adjacent properties. So I thought it would be appropriate,
Right.
whether you incorporate that in with another neighborhood meeting or whether you just go out just to verify what's out there so we don't have any hearsay, so to speak.
Right,
when we have the
and I don't
discussion.
mind doing that at all, walking the property. I just wanted to clarify it. It sounds like I've never seen this property.
Well,
I just want to make sure I
quite
understand.
honestly,
what I have.
I heard that and it
So-
kind of came across that way and
Right.
it bothered me a little bit.
Okay.
So we just wanted to be sure that when you report back, and we'll say, we've gone out, we've looked at it, we know exactly what's out there and here's what we're gonna do. That's all we're asking.
So, all right, then, and then there was the discussion about alleys.
Mary Beth, can
Please go.
I have a question.
Okay. This is Nathan Clark.
Yeah, Nathan Clark. Does the detention pond from phase 1 have anything
Yes, if I understand correctly, that the detention pond was sized with the eventuality of this property being developed.
It needs to be bigger.
No, it was sized.
Oh,
So, but I think that they can, yeah, they're saying yes. They anticipated eventually, in some form or fashion, this property being developed, so the detention pond that exists is oversized for the current level of development and is appropriately sized for the addition of these
Phase two.
as at least from an engineering standpoint. But we're also going to have, I'll relay this to our stormwater manager, who can come out and assess what's going on out there at the street level. I tend to agree with what Mr. Reichert said, that just from a hydrological standpoint, I don't see how that the water from the cottages could make it to Hunter Avenue. But I'm not disputing what you're saying. I'm just trying to. Smarter people than me will be able to look at it and figure out what's going on.
Okay, that was where I was getting, is that stormwater from Clemson should come out and take a look. Okay.
Okay, super. It's getting longer and longer. We've got one more thing, I think, and that would be the alleys. Is this something that we want the developer to consider?
I'm a little conflicted about the alleys.
I am as well.
Because I know we've had a lot of discussions with some of the other developments in town that we're long past as far as being able to, you got to consider access to those, privacy issues behind everybody's house. I guess the other part, I did a quick calc looking at how much paved area that's going to add. We talked about, we got some pluses on changing the configuration, and now we're going to add some more non-permeable space out there for runoff, plus you're going to have some ditches and so forth to go along with that, so it's going to take up a fair amount of space to do that. So I guess we could ask them to look at it one more time.
Okay.
I see where it could be a little bit of an issue for a number of different reasons.
All right, so we need to make a motion, correct? And vote, and we can add these items to be considered for the next, and what is this called, a plat?
Preliminary plat approval.
Preliminary plat, so that these items are considered and that the developer would bring us some information. So who wants to make this monstrous motion? Does anybody need some help? You can start it, we can all help you. How's that?
Okay, I'll give it a start here.
Good for you.
All right, we'll make a motion that will ask the developer to take a look at lot number 6 and lot number 7 for a modified envelope, and with a note on the drawing for general tree protection measures to be assessed for those properties. And just as an aside, I'd like to think there would be a general note on the development drawings altogether to say that the tree protection measures taken in all the different areas, but specifically we're talking about lot 6 and lot 7. Item number 2, we'd be looking at water overflow issues from the current detention pond not being addressing heavy rainfall issues. Third item would be, I guess we generally agree that the houses would be facing Hunter Avenue, potentially with curb cuts into Hunter Avenue. And then the fourth item would be assessment of potential to put alleyways on the houses that are facing Hunter, and provide a report at our next meeting.
All right. Do we have a second? Okay, Elaine is giving us a second. Have we ever had Jackie come on board? Okay, thank you. All right, then, I'm going to ask for any more discussion. Anything else? All right, then, I'm gonna give a roll call vote. Curtis, to advance this measure. So Curtis, are you a yes or no?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, and I'm a yes.
Yes.
And what we're doing is we're advancing it, but requesting they look at those four items.
That's correct.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Okay, so we don't have any no's, and so I did it a little bit differently. I was thinking that you had asked me to do a roll call vote, but that's when we have a remote person. There are so many little twists in this thing because of this. Okay, so thank you all for your patience, and the measure passes and it will advance with these slight amendments. And thank you for the public's participation, and thank you for the developers for coming back and being patient enough to answer all these questions. These are our property owners and our neighbors. We're all neighbors, so in essence. All right, we need to move on to the next item. And that would be our advisory items from Clemson Next Committee. And the first item is, I assume, is land use and development. Have we lost our, oh, there she is. Did you move around? Okay.
All right. Evening Planning Commission, I'm Shannon Quattlebaum. I'm the project manager for the Clemson Next project. And I'm here tonight to give you some information. We have 3 work groups that have finalized their recommendations. So I'll walk through those with you. We're going to start with the easy ones first. And I'm happy to answer questions if you want to in the middle of it, because I know we get going and on a roll. So again, there's nothing to vote on. These are recommendations that the work groups are making to council, that council may ratify them and you can maybe move forward in this direction. So basically an idea of a direction for the city to move in. So we'll start with what do you guys have up first? We'll start with what you have first.
Land use.
You have land use.
and
We will
development
start
work
there.
groups.
We'll go with the tough one first. So the first one that land use has is to incorporate affordable and workforce housing into catalyst areas. So in the strategic plan, some catalyst areas within the city were identified, and this group feels it's important to make sure that there are affordable and workforce housing options in those catalyst areas as those planning efforts move forward. The second section here is about student and non-student housing. So going back to those catalyst areas, it calls for cultivating appropriately scaled, purpose-built student housing in certain catalyst areas. That includes functional mixed uses, so mixed types of housing, green spaces, and institutional uses. That it has access to public transit and is safely walkable and bikeable to campus or other needs of daily living for those students that choose to live there. Following that is the idea of establishing a purpose-built student housing as a new type within the residential developments category in the table of uses for residential districts in the zoning ordinance. So calling out a new type of housing.
Can you, or I can't even one, kind of describe what we're talking about with purpose-built student housing?
I can take a go at it, Elaine.
I just think this is a term that not everybody may be familiar with.
Thank you. I'll do it. So this group has talked about identifying purpose-built student housing as basically by layout, so that apartments built for students are usually laid out differently than apartments built for families, say. So usually all of the bathrooms are accessible only through a bedroom. There's a smaller common living space. And there are some other differences too. So this recommendation is to kind of call out those differences and make this a separate category. Does that cover it?
Yeah, and this is not new to Clemson. This is Auburn has some, Texas has some. There are many places around the country that are adding this into their zoning because once a student housing project like she just described, with 4 bedrooms and 4 private baths and no common area bath. And they usually have typically less storage because students don't need as much storage as a family does. So if they no longer, I won't say fail, but if they no longer are going to be used for student housing, they're not really amenable to use for families. So why don't we just call that out and say, if you're going to build something, we want it's going to be specifically for student housing, we want it in these areas, and this is how it could be built. Is that kind of what?
That's it.
So these can be designated zoning areas?
Yes.
They'll be either optional or specific for that particular application.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
That would be an optional zoning, or would it be a very specific zoning that these would specifically only be for residential development or student-built housing, I guess is the question.
I think the idea is that moving forward with the planning process for these catalyst areas or areas that could be redeveloped in the future, designating which areas you would like this housing to be in, that specific type of housing.
Yeah, so you referenced several times the catalyst areas, and I assume you're speaking about the ones that were identified in the white paper.
Mm-hmm.
Are those firmly in place, or are they still in the white paper?
They are still in the strategic plan. Down a little bit further down in the recommendations, it recommends that the city does accept those catalyst areas for future study.
But they have not done so far, right? It's not. That's
They have
been
not.
done.
They have not done that.
It's
so
still
far.
a recommendation.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just accepting those areas, and for future planning purposes, that those would be areas to look at for bigger plans for the city.
But just to be clear, they haven't been codified, I guess.
Correct. Correct. And this would not do that either.
Okay.
Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah.
And so they're not wanting this property to be flexible enough to be multi-purpose.
So I think there are areas that will be multi-purpose. There are some of the catalyst areas that they think should be more multi-purpose, and some where it would be appropriate that would be more appropriate for purpose-built student housing than others.
Okay. So one of them is, and I've forgotten what the names of them are, the one where Tiger Bubble Bath is, and that right in there at the intersection of 93 and 76 is one of the catalyst areas. And that's to me, that's a reasonable place to look at specific purpose-built student housing.
Close to campus.
Because it's close to campus and it's right on the bus line.
And walkable.
And
bikeable.
walkable and bikeable. But not down at Bilo necessarily, where that's another one that they're talking, is that Clemson Crossing?
That is-
I'm forgetting the name, but that's one where we talked about having workforce housing, which would certainly be different than purpose-built student housing.
And that would be where you might put the flexible?
So there's been no planning done for where the student housing would go, where affordable or workforce housing would go. There's no planning done.
Okay.
All these recommendations say
Just further study.
here are these catalyst areas. They're the areas that we think could be used for redevelopment. And if it moves in that direction, we would like to put a planning process in place to identify which ones should we kind of try to push towards purpose-built student housing, and which ones would be more appropriate for workforce or affordable housing or an institutional use or retail. So all the options are still on the table. This is just saying, let's look at these catalyst areas, and in the future it might be helpful to have this definition of purpose-built student housing moving forward with this.
So, for landowners, how is that going to enter people that own the land now? So if they're in a catalyst area, their zoning might change? Don't know. Okay.
I mean,
Right.
I have
Sky's
no
the
idea.
limit.
It's really just, these are, the catalyst areas are areas of the city where the previous consultants came in and identified these are areas that could be redeveloped in the future. So we're not proposing any changes of zoning. We're not going anywhere near that right now. This is just a kind of having an eye to 30 years in the future.
This goes under the long range
There you go.
plan, the LRP.
And so the next one really gets to that. It says, in these designated catalyst areas, use the plan development process, neighborhood planning processes, and other policy and zoning tools and new funding mechanisms to target new housing options to non-students where desired. So it's still about how do we put the planning in place to create the type of housing in those areas that is appropriate. So the next section is about creating overlay districts. It talks about accepting the catalyst areas as mapped in the study, as mapped in the original strategic plan for further study. So not to designate them or change the zoning, just that yes, we think these areas could use further study. Talks about creating overlay districts for those catalyst areas. Those, I assume, would come out of that future study. So that is not imminent either. That is also long-range planning. The third one is something I think that's already been, is in the process of being discussed. This committee just wanted to weigh in on that as well, which is consider removing residential use, even as mixed use by right, from all non-residential districts.
Which that one's related to what the pending ordinance that we voted to forward, where we removed the 2-acre minimum in the C districts. This is related to it.
Right, I guess, I read the paper today, and I think there's some resistance already, so that's being acknowledged.
Right.
Okay.
The next one is for the city to consider requiring bar review and approval of all planned developments in those catalyst areas or overlay districts. And in the Uptown District, to establish a development process and framework, including concepts for development and types of appropriate development that are economically viable for property owners and desirable to the greater community. And that's underway as well with the Uptown Redevelopment Workshop. And there were 3 catalyst areas deemed the far north, the near north, and Pacolet-Milliken, which the recommendation of the original consultants and this committee was just to kind of use the existing tools and wait and see how those go.
Where are you looking from? Somehow.
There was a second page to those land use recommendations.
I have it somewhere.
It's item 6.
Yeah, probably wrote on it. No? Sorry, I did have it.
It's okay.
Sorry, that's my fault. I printed it out 3 times.
The last 3 recommendations are around expanding capacity and fostering collaboration. Consider working with a development consultant if necessary to facilitate those catalyst area projects. So working with consultants on those future planning for those areas. To consider having the city become a member of the Urban Land Institute and pursue the resources available through that organization. And to explore opportunities for partnerships and engagement with relevant university programs. So, any questions? You guys okay if we move on to this? Do you have small business next?
Yes.
Let me ask you one quick question. Where do you see all this going? I mean, this is the recommendations. What do you see as the path forward?
Some of this, it's easy to see a path forward, I think. You look at some of them that are maybe, so look at number 4 that says, consider requiring BAR review and approval. I think if that moves forward, that's something that maybe this work group brings to you as, let's look at the process of how some of these projects are approved. So a lot of it is long-range planning, and I think right now the focus is to work on the planning for the Uptown area and see how that goes and figure out how we can use that plan and process to inform our planning for the other catalyst areas.
So what process do you see that taking? Is that something that's going to be a sit down between the planning commission and Clemson Next? Maybe have a working group with the city council to advance all these things? How do you physically kind of see put all
So
that
the land
together?
use, I can answer that a lot better for the other committees, actually.
Okay.
The land use committee, because it is so focused on kind of ordinance and process, some of that probably will proceed the way that you're discussing.
Okay.
Some work sessions and work groups and looking at those things and deciding, do you want to make those changes? They are just saying, this is the community looking at the original recommendations from the strategic plan and taking their experience in Clemson, and these community members saying, these are things we think you should look at. These could make Clemson better in the long run. They're not saying you have to do it. They're not saying it has to be done this way. They're just saying, these are recommendations we have of possible actions.
So if we have business people who have ideas, where would that work into all of this? We have residents who own property, and they have ideas about what to do with Clemson. I know they've been able to come in and speak, but I'm not sure, you know, when you've got 3 minutes or even an extension, it's not really a time to kind of go back and forth about, because I've heard some different plans that sound exciting to attract more business or more tourism, for instance, to Clemson. How does that fit anywhere?
So
you being the
if
the
we're
master guru.
I am not a guru at all. I am just in charge of logistics. I'm just juggling balls. So I think if you're talking about businesses, that would be the small business group, and that would be the next set of recommendations.
Oh, super.
If we want to go ahead and look at those.
We might remind everybody that July the 20th is that there are 3 different times, and I hope all of y'all are coming to at least one of them. 3 different times and locations for feedback and interaction with residents and anyone else who's interested in the Clemson Next group.
Right, so on July 20th, Clemson Next is having 3 public meetings that day, from 9 to 11 at Abernathy Park Shelter, from 12 to 2 at the fire station, the community room at the fire station on Issaquena Road, Issaquena Trail, and from 5 to 7 at Little John Community Center. And at each of those meetings, we'll be there with the same information from all the work groups, and we'll have representatives, the community members that are on those work groups there to get feedback, get your opinions, look at these recommendations, look at some of the projects they're thinking about working on moving forward. So that's really, and we're going to start having these meetings moving forward to interact more and get more feedback.
And I don't see those being meetings where somebody's going to be timed and cut off after 3 minutes.
No, they're not at all. This first set of meetings are simply drop-in informational. So there's no set time for a presentation. There's no set presentation. We'll talk about things, we'll walk through things and answer questions and take feedback.
Right, because, you know, I've listened to a public meeting, I listened to council meeting, and even our own meeting, and there's a lot of pushback from property owners. So some of these property owners seem to have ideas. You know, I'm not masterful at big super ideas, but some of them are, and so they're just trying to figure out a way to interject, and I don't know how to tell them.
Well, you could start by telling them to check out Clemson Next and get involved. We don't turn anyone away. Anyone that wants to come and help and provide feedback or join the meetings is very welcome to do so.
Yeah, all of the meetings are public, and like I'm on the workforce housing one, and all of our meetings are recorded. Anybody can go back and watch, either
I think they
watch them.
Okay, they want to participate. They want to speak, and I guess they're feeling they're not having a exchange.
Okay. Well, hopefully we will find ways to accommodate that in the future.
Thank you. That'd be
I'm
great.
pretty excited about this because at least they're looking at things long range, and that's not something we've done a lot of in the past, or that I've done.
Well,
So, ready to move on to the small business recommendations? These are a little bit easier to these are actually more immediate than the land use groups. So the small business group has 6 recommendations. The first one is to consider requiring developers of new mixed-use buildings to put up a bond per square foot of commercial space to be released when those funds are spent or needed for an actual build-out of that space. And the business owners in this group felt like the existing space on the bottom floor of a lot of our mixed-use buildings needs a lot of upfit work, and it's daunting for new business owners to come in and have to deal with that. So trying to find a way to attract new businesses into those spaces, that this could be an avenue to do that. Recommendation number 2 is to incentivize property owners to fill vacant commercial space by establishing a vacant storefront registration. So that would be a requirement and a fee that would include a means to identify vacant spaces from the street and through a database or spreadsheet maintained by city staff. And this was another item that was brought up by a couple of very new entrepreneurs that are downtown, that when they walked around physically to try and find space that was vacant for their new business venture, it was very hard to tell what was vacant, what was used, who to contact for that. So having some sort of centralized database or spreadsheet or someone to contact for that would help them. Number 3 is establish a business improvement district to work with other organizations such as the Chamber of Commerce to support business retention, marketing, and recruitment efforts throughout the city. So this is something I think they are very excited to move forward on if this is ratified. It's basically kind of the business owners coming together and working together on marketing efforts, and existing businesses working to help recruit and attract new businesses and retain them to the city as well. The 4th one is establish a community-based incubator or other entity to strengthen innovation and entrepreneurship, partnering with local universities to do that. And they asked for consideration of creating a role within the city staff that would help fulfill those recommendations above, working with the vacant registration database, the business improvement district, and the incubator. And the last one is to conduct a tax equity evaluation on mixed-use commercial space in the downtown corridor. So there was some discussion that in those mixed-use buildings, the business owners that were leasing the commercial space had a different tax burden than the housing units in those mixed-use buildings. So there was discussion of taking a look at that and moving forward.
A tax equity evaluation, so to make it fair?
Well, just, first of all, just to look at it and see.
If that's true?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. Do you guys have any questions about those? And the last group of recommendations I have for you are from the University Relationships Work Group. They have 3. The first one is to establish a sustained university commitment to collaborate with the city with communication and decision-making regarding city-university partnerships at the governing board level. Second one is to identify university staff members whose roles may include partnering with the city on a lot of the key issues involved with Clemson Next, such as off-campus housing, business and entrepreneurial development, traffic and transportation, and communicating information regarding university programs or policies that would impact the city. And the third one is to expand regional intergovernmental collaboration on key shared issues. So working with our local, other municipalities in our area on things like transportation development, housing affordability, and economic diversification.
I've got a question about that. I asked you, when we talked about this one time before, how all in, so to speak, is the Clemson University to this recommendations that you have here?
So there are representatives from the university in this work group.
Understand.
And they feel like these are these are achievable.
I understand, but as a personal experience, we've had these discussions with the appropriate parties over there before. And didn't go very far, and I was just curious as to whether there was a new movement or new thoughts. I mean, all of these items have been on the list for a long time. Hadn't seen any movement whatsoever. Just kind of curious what the commitment is.
I think the idea with the Clemson Next is to try to formalize this moving forward, so there is some accountability on these. And I think I can speak to number 2 on here, identifying university staff members. That's come up in all of the work groups. They would like to know, who at the university do I partner with for X or for Y? Or who do I contact for this? So coming up with some sort of channel for that communication to move through, or points of contact, I think is a very achievable and something they're willing to work on.
Well, I think if you look at the joint city-university committee that's out there, those touch points have already been identified, if I remember correctly, and have been for some time, but just haven't really moved forward.
I think this is looking at even bringing it down a notch. So kind of at grassroots level, there's a business that is looking for an intern in this. Is there a pathway we can identify that would set up internships? And that's something the business group has talked about.
I guess I'd say this about that. I thought we ought to be moving up rather than down. We've already been down and it didn't work. Kind of need to move up.
I think we're trying to do both.
Well, I'm very interested in this.
There are university representatives on this work group, right? Which
Yes, there
is
are.
not something that we've
So
had before.
there-
And Todd Mike can speak to, I think there have been some significant changes in JCUAB within the last year or two, because they've divided into subgroups. Is that correct, Todd? And those individual groups are working more now?
I kind of hear everybody's position with this, and I relate to all positions. I do think that, like Shannon said, they're looking at different approaches. There's been discussion of a seat at the table for real with the university, as well as getting down to just grassroots, micro kind of level. Certainly, Curtis, you and I have been down this road with university recruitment office plan development and the accountability aspect there. And that was several years ago. And then to Elaine's point, that my personal experience as chairman of the housing committee at JCUB is that the group I'm working with, both on the city side and the university side, we're clicking and making some progress with the transparency, level of cooperation, the sharing of information, and communicating and identifying some common goals. And I think actually accomplishing some stuff. It has been very hard from my perspective. I can't speak to the other committees. I don't know that that's true with the other committees or what level it is. But I do see, I'm encouraged by what I'm experiencing personally.
That's encouraging. When we did the town and gown part of the comprehensive plan, Todd was on my committee for that, and we tried very, very hard to reach the right folks over there. We spent a lot of time, spent some lunch money, and got some commitment, but we never got any action. So we'd really like to see this move forward, because we spent a fair amount of energy in trying to make this happen, and it just didn't.
It's a good piece.
I think it's the bigger piece of all of this, actually. Unless this works, the rest of it I don't think is going to work very well.
Well, hopefully we will find a way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Shannon? Any comments? Thank you, Shannon. You had to, I'm sorry we can't put you sooner on the agenda. All right, well, good. I hope you enjoyed your neighbors. All right, the next part is staff reports. Are there any staff reports, Todd?
There are three things I'd like to bring up with the commission. First is the comprehensive plan updates, which is on the agenda. That I think now rolled out, it's about 3/4 of the chapters. So far, we haven't gotten any feedback from you. We're getting ready to get starting to sign off and go ahead and let them say that chapter's done. So if y'all can let me know, again, some of y'all have for several weeks now, and I don't know what feels comfortable to y'all, but I just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to send out an email tomorrow that will propose maybe some closeout dates so we can say.
That would be helpful.
Yes.
You know, we all have a lot to do, and it's like I have to prioritize what I'm doing next.
And we're getting to the point where we're just now, in fact, during this meeting, we got another chapter sent to us on these subjects. And we can go ahead and just wrap that up. That would help. So we're getting close.
Okay, so what you're going to send in the email are you're going to say this chapter, this one, this one, this one are going to close out on such and such a date. That would be so helpful.
Yeah, if it would, and certainly if y'all aren't comfortable with the dates that I proposed,
Okay, seriously? That would be great.
I mean, because I want to, it's most important that y'all have the time to do it. I think given the nature of this particular exercise, which is really just cleaning up stuff and not changing anything substantive.
Except chunks of redundancy, right?
Yes.
That would be great.
And numbering and typos. I think the song's doing an excellent job.
You know, something that would be good is if there were a discussion, maybe with city council and planning commission, how can we make the next one, what would that be, 2034? I'm not sure I'll be here, but I want to leave a better legacy of something less unwieldy. But you know, we had to do with what we were given. We had to do what we had the objectives and strategies and goals.
There's been some discussion about that. Several examples that we floated about what other municipalities have done to have a distilled version of it. And I think that this is something the council will be discussing.
Okay.
And then they'll be able to build on the content of what all developed. But really, to your point, Beth, is kind of getting what are the key issues and how can we use a little bit more accessible format. And maybe the bigger version that we're dealing with today, it sits behind the scenes, and then we have the public version that's a lot more graphic oriented, boils down, highlights.
See chapter so-and-so in such and such a document. And I think we were alluding to that in that, like, I'm just giving you, for instance, that there was some work that was done, and it's complete, that it be referenced and into wherever it shows up. And then, like, I was talking to somebody, and I said, you know, every time I turn around, somebody's going, why don't we have an emergency center here in Clemson? Well, that has actually been answered. So it's like they keep asking it, and it'd be nice to say, well, see comp plan, whatever, section so and so, but that may be way down the road. I don't know, but because I'm facilities, I'm a little bit different from everybody. I mean, that was my element, and so I'm a little different from everyone else because I was completely dependent on city people to explain that. And because when we started out with the report card, it's like, okay, where's all this knowledge going to go? Because Jim Fowler, is that his name? Fowler? Tim was just a bundle of knowledge. So I don't know where that's going to go. I mean, I didn't even realize that all the drains with the little tiger paw, that was, you know, don't put any, you know, blah, blah in here. And I didn't even think about it, you know, that they were out there. I just walked right on past. So it was just good to have this information. Here's what the city's doing about drainage.
Well, and I agree, and I think that, I think the whole journey that the city is on right now, with Clemson Next, and what that might yield, will undoubtedly result in some modifications to the comprehensive as decisions are made on transportation, housing, land use, university relations, economic development, that as decisions are made, that should any of them be contrary to the comp plan, which maybe will be, just because, based on what I'm hearing so far, that, but I think there'll be an opportunity to certainly modify and strengthen the relationship between the outcomes that comes next and the comprehensive plan need to be aligned. And I'm sure the council, as this process solidifies one course of action, that one of the things that we've already talked about in some of the committees is one of the first things we want to do is for staff and the planning commission to go out and say, okay, well, here's how the comp plan supports that, or here's what we need to do to modify it, make it
Okay.
better. So I anticipate several ways of that in the year or so ahead as decisions start to see.
So are do these committees have some deadlines? Because this is, soon coming up on, what, is it 2 years?
Yeah, depending on how you look at it, but yeah, it was, moratorium that
2020.
19 moratorium that then the ordinance was passed. Or maybe it was
January 2020.
So to my knowledge, they haven't imposed any deadlines on themselves at this point.
So I have two questions about comprehensive planning, and the first one is, when will we start the process for 2034, or I hope we will look at
That's
it
what
for
we're
like
just talking-
2050 or something like that. So that one ends in, so that we do a little bit further along out planning than just for 10 years. That might tie into some of this long-range planning that's going on through Clemson Next right now. But that we would start that in 2023 or
So my
2022.
hope and aim is that sometime this year or early next, that we have a serious discussion with the council as to what their objectives are, how they're doing this. For two reasons. One, so we can start getting our head around being prepared for the update, 24 update, which would be.
Well, that's a new one, right? Not an update, but it's a new plan. Yeah.
I mean, you have to review it, but you can roll before anyway, correct. But also that if, I felt like that we were on a good track with the report card or the accountability program to say how we do these things. And that the council and commission may make the conscious decision to say, given the transition phase we're in, and maybe this isn't, the next year isn't the right year to do a report card because so many things are in suspension. I don't know. If not, that we probably ought to get moving on that so we can get that. And also to serve as a good springboard for the next update or the next rewrite of the comments. So my hope is to bring that up again with y'all. Let's get this update done and kind of see, in my opinion, how the year unfolds. And then at some point, talk to y'all about what your recommendations and thoughts are. And it might be with a sit down council and have a conversation. Or maybe become apparent through the actions of the council next. I think right now I don't have real answers to all those questions. Other than I agree with you, we need to be thinking.
So I was thinking, as we do this, when we start that process of developing a new comprehensive plan, maybe it would be helpful if we could have a summary of nothing but what was accomplished from the 2014 plan. Because I know we've done that, and that's what you're talking about with the report card, but.
2024
Well, it is, yeah, but it was created in 2014.
Right.
Yeah, but the 2024 plan, so that we would have, so whoever's working in these individual groups, like I worked with Sharon, when she did, that they would have, okay, this is what the city accomplished in the 10 years of the 2024 plan being in place. And so I worry about people saying, well, we need to do this, just like what Mayor Beth was saying, we need to do this when it's already been done. So we need to document somehow that this might become a formal document for the city that's a summary of what was accomplished out of the 2024 plan. And that would be helpful in my mind going forward too.
I agree, and, we have a benchmark from 2019, so we just pick up from there as to what has been accomplished since then. But I'll tell you that in the last 6 to 8 months in particular, my familiarity with the comp plan is very high, and that is it's not that daunting, and I honestly believe that as a group we can sit down and in 1 or 2 sessions do what we did before. Allow staff to come through and bring y'all up to date as to our impression as to what's occurred with these things. And then y'all can weigh in as to how we can forward that. And I agree, Elaine, that would be a really good start for these things. But that, I did want to bring that up, so I'll be sending something out about wrapping up these last days. I had 2 other issues. One is there was a request for the My Civic app to have the ability to do the public comments for the planning commission, and the BAR, BCA, and Lowell has made that change. So it's in there now to where under report issue, that's where a person can get online on My Civic and make a comment to the planning commission. In looking at that, it brought to light something that Elaine and Mary Beth mentioned this afternoon, is that our rules of procedure, bylaws, say that we will accept comments up to 5 o'clock a day.
Which was the time of this meeting.
Yeah, and so that's obviously an issue we would. But I looked at our other boards, the BAR, BCA, and it's close to business the day before.
So we need to propose some more bylaw changes tonight because we have to wait 10 days.
Yeah, I would suggest that I would like the commission to consider establishing the policy of cutoff being close to business the day before. And here's the reason why. That there have been times, and not so much lately, that compare service, but there have been times where we've had citizens provide meaningful or substantial input, like several pages of documentation, that we got minutes before a particular BAR meetings. And in a situation like that, I feel like by allowing it so close to the meeting time, the opportunity for frustration is high. The citizens can be frustrated because y'all don't really have time to digest it. Y'all are frustrated because you're getting it the last minute, or frustrated because now you've got to stop the meeting so you can sort that information. And we may end up getting blocked or deleted it. And so, by at least making it the day before, if nothing else, then y'all can have that data, look at it, be aware of it. So I'd like y'all to consider that, and we can't change that tonight.
But we can set it in motion so that we can in the future, or the next meeting even, have it straightened out. So you'll bring us some verbiage about deadlines?
Unless I hear an objection to that, I think that would be, and that'd be in line with other boards, and so that everybody is just, now that doesn't stop, if somebody sends an email, we can still forward it to y'all, and I think the language is
front
Yeah,
everywhere.
already said we got that, so, because we put a lot of confusion. And I think we could,
So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so unless there's an objection to that, then I'll draft that simple language to amend our rules of procedure.
Okay, so this fellow was talking about tonight, in that vein, about some of the documents not being available until yesterday.
Yeah, and part of that though, Mary Beth, actually, we did get the wrong happened to us today. The owner, the developer met with the property owners last Thursday.
Okay.
So that was Thursday. As a result of that, that was when they could find the time, and after they met with all last, they committed to doing that around the time that everybody found a location. So then after that, I think they were surprised that there was an actionable outcome or something they felt like they could do to help the community or give them what they wanted. So they began working on that. Philip mentioned that to me, and I think I might be moved up a little bit. It might have been Monday or Tuesday that he called and said, hey, we're working on this alternative plan. What do we do? And I said, well, my suggestion would be to at least present it to the planning commission, because why not share it with all? You don't have to take action. Alternatively, we could round the thing to all the way to the bottom.
And all that was the turnaround, is that right, of the houses?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can take,
Well,
I'm okay with that.
That was my viewpoint on it as well, which was, let's go ahead and present it all. Then they sent me a copy. I wanted to at least look at what they had done first. And I looked at it, and it didn't have sidewalks, and I knew that we would water the sidewalks. I ended up with it, because we had it. I said, we didn't have the sidewalks. And we talked about running it beneath their property and including on the other side of the entrance. So they resubmitted that, and I got that post visits yesterday, and I got the printed copies today. And maybe it was the wrong thing to do, bring it to y'all and share, but I presented it to y'all to do what you wanted. It seemed that,
I think it was,
in a positive
it wasn't
response to
that hard to understand.
Yeah.
Turn the houses around. You know, it could have been something else that we are like, I need more explanation, right? Do y'all, I mean,
So that's how that happened, and then, so it was, I'll take responsibility if I should not have presented it, but I felt like it was keeping the spirit of trying to follow the neighborhood process.
sure, and he got to express his frustration. We're okay with that. It's we the people out there. So.
Well, and if it was the final vote tonight, I think it would not have happened.
Okay.
We would
Good
present
point.
something like that, and then it would be for y'all to make a final decision before it was chance for him.
Okay.
Just because we have another month of input and review and another opportunity for public comment under that proposal, because that apparently is the direction.
And I understand. I mean, if you think about it, there's something to do every day here. And people could just, just give up their lives and do nothing but city work. As volunteers or as interested people, there's too much. There's too many committees. I feel for you guys. I feel for them. I don't know how you keep up. I wouldn't know what committee I was sitting in, as many as you all have. So, but I also understand his frustration. I certainly understand what happened, and so I think it was all good. He got to speak toward it. We can decide. Do we need to adjust our bylaws? Do we need to change how we do things? Was he totally right, and we never should have done it? I mean, we've had this discussion now, so I think it's good. So anyway, I don't know. You think they went away feeling that they were heard?
I believe they did, and that, the gentleman who was frustrated about finding out tonight about, understanding he was not at the public meeting, neighborhood meeting. So hopefully he'll get more connected to the neighborhood.
Right.
And certainly, that he's dialed in at the meeting tonight, and we'll have all this information here to share prior to coming back to the final vote. And it may not be next month. We may need more time to put all the materials together because the deadline is, but we'll see. But and to answer your question, I feel like, that, I think Mrs. Taylor, kind of summarized it, where she wanted to do that. I think most people would prefer to see nothing happen to the property, but recognizing that it was, that I think progress was made to protect some of the neighboring properties and to get a better product. I think that was
I just have an aside then. Talking about the sidewalk and it only being in front of those 5 houses, that's kind of frustrating. It's too bad if the city has a great place to put a sidewalk. They're wonderful, and they're wonderful for a community.
I can tell you as someone who walks a lot, it's very frustrating to come up to a development where there's a little bit of sidewalk and you get to walk safely, and then, and Oak Street is a really good example. We need that last little bit going up to the intersection with Strawberry, there's no sidewalk.
Yeah, it sounds like would just be so, and I know it's money, and I know it's the city, it just sounds so easy if you just extend it that way and that way. I don't know.
So this one actually kind of ends at a good point when it comes down to the, away from Pendleton Road.
Oh, does it go all
It's
the
that
way?
part, it's that part from the first house in this development that goes by, I guess it's, Arzou's property
Yes.
that goes along that's where, and they're talking about that being the most dangerous part.
And whose property?
Arzou, Enid.
Oh,
They say
Arzou,
Enid.
Enid. Oh, gosh, yes.
That was her husband, right? That was her husband. But that they're talking about that not being safe, that seems like the logical place to put a sidewalk, extend that sidewalk all the way down the Pendleton. Because they do have that little pathway, whatever this thing is called along Pendleton. But that seems like it should be kind of hold the developer to help him complete that little bit.
With the city.
Partnership with the property owner and with the city to make that happen.
Well,
I see something like that.
Probably have to have annexed that property to install the sidewalk. You'd have to have an agreement to do it. So the owner would have to agree to allow that to be
Put along
put
their
on there.
property.
It's true.
I
And I
don't know
didn't
that's
pay attention
possible.
when
I
I
don't
rode
really,
by there.
but, just as
Start
far
the
as
discussion.
going out there and looking at that particular piece of property, the hard spot is trying to take a left out of Hunter on Pendleton, and there's so much vegetation there on the left, it's very dangerous. And as we said before, nobody on Pendleton Road is driving 35, they're all at 45 and 50.
Except for me.
Yeah, except for
Turn
Mary
the
Beth,
speed.
but it's very dangerous out there, any day, pulling into Pendleton Road. And, Old Stone Church is even worse. Down where the Old Stone Church,
Maybe we don't
everybody's
have to-
driving about 50 over
We
there.
don't have to fix that one. Anyway, so
That's
the way we handled it tonight, adding these things for the guys to do, you seem to be thinking that was a good way to go.
Yeah, I think they let direction now, because they were coming back for final approval, and that y'all told them the things that you wanted them to do, the things you wanted them to look into, consider.
Okay.
And, I expect they'll come back with positive response to these things. And at the next meeting, if they provide materials that are required to do, check the box.
So we were kind of like understanding as far as the alleys. I don't think we wired them. They're just supposed to consider it. Is that
Yes, yes.
how we left it?
We asked them to review it.
Because it seems like an awful lot of concrete.
Requesting on the trees,
Yeah, I'm sure something's going on that they're not aware of. Yeah.
Well,
This is,
isn't there a problem with, adjacent to that, with the Walto LLC, that's water on Pendleton Road? I don't know where I was, and someone was talking about when it rains really heavily, the road floods into Pendleton Road from that property?
Actually, I remember when we looked at those smaller houses on Pendleton Road, that discussion came up during the bar review, and apparently during heavy downpours, they could have some issues further down Pendleton Road, not necessarily adjacent to Hunter. So
No,
that may be
it's right, it's
contributing.
before you get to Miss
Yes,
Cooper's property,
yes,
I think.
Yes. And that was brought up before, and I don't think there was a resolution, but that was coming more from, I thought, the other side of the road, but I could be mistaken.
I can't, I hesitate to speak on that, other than I know what you're talking about, or what issues, and whether it was resolved, or what the source of it was. It seemed like it was some culvert was not proper size, or something like that, I may be mistaken. And, I haven't heard about it.
because, my comment about the 500-year flood was, we all remember, a lot of property was damaged, and if this problem wasn't there, then that happened. And then it's obviously something that's changed since then.
Well, the good news is about most water problems is they're pretty detailed, you can figure out, follow the source.
Oh, great. Okay.
I'm sure that, engineering departments and water, department will, be out there tomorrow.
And I think don't we have an extra charge on our water bill now?
Yes,
We do.
Yeah, my water bill is really low, but the total is pretty high.
I do have one last thing I want to
Okay.
just bring y'all's attention. With, land developments, there are, varying degrees of amendments that may changes. And that there are some that are done at the administrative level, and that can only be, zoning administrative level. And the Catholic Church is getting ready to build their parish hall, and that they're proposing a modification to what was originally proposed. The original proposal,
And you're saying it doesn't need to come to us?
it does not, in my opinion, but it's a courtesy I wanted to share with y'all, for sure. Okay, so this is what was, sorry, I'm trying to monitor as you can see. Here's what was approved with the original PD, and that's facing it, Edgewood. And here's what they're proposing. And I just think two things, this is in keeping with the architecture they use for the church itself.
sidewalk running down Edgewood.
It looks better
So the
from
one
here.
would be like looking,
This is the same sidewalk right now.
Isn't that the church?
Yeah, this is the church right here.
And so
And this corner right here is this corner right here.
Okay.
And that in the language for the PDs, what it says is that, just so we're all on the same page, it says the minor changes that do not alter district boundaries and that involve provisions of minor characteristics of the PD, such as reduction in the density, relocation of driveways, facade details, landscaping, reduction in parking, drainage structures, and other features that do not materially affect the street plan concept or violate other applicable regulations may be approved by the zoning enforcement officials.
But that's not you?
Well, I'm acting as Jake, because
Oh,
that's.
that's what Jake would do?
And, but given that this architecture, this material they used for the church, which is interior, was already approved to be slightly different material than this, that, I'm inclined to say these two match, and that to approve this. And I wanted to bring this to y'all's attention.
I'm still kind of lost as to where that is. Tell me where that is in relation to the Worms house and the Williams house.
This is the Williams house on the right-hand side.
Oh, really it frustrates me they put those nice, big, pretty trees in here. Yeah, but, okay, so,
That was done, 4 years ago.
so that's where this, not the actual church sanctuary, but their family building?
Yes.
Okay.
So this corner, Elaine, the corner you see, see the person really or not, but, the front corner of this building, from this angle, this is the same corner.
So we'd be standing on the Williams driveway looking
Yeah, this
down
one you'd
Edgewood.
actually, this one you would not be, the Williams Drive would be behind you a little bit.
Right, that's
And
what I mean,
street.
is you're standing from there looking
So
towards Sloan Street.
are you inclined to accept what they've given you?
And, just because, I mean, the regulating document was not specific about the architecture, it didn't say it had to be a certain kind. They had some sample renderings of what it was going to look like, and the site plan is the building is like 200 square feet smaller than the original one. And this one's got 3 gables, the other one had 1. Obviously, it's a different type, different color brick than this one. The window, the starkness of that one window versus this feels a little friendlier, a little more open. So those are some of the changes that they propose. Most of them to do with architecture of that building, and I just wanted to bring it to y'all's attention. So if y'all have objection to this, the alternative would be I bring it back and I'll tell you what else.
So is there going to be a retaining wall that goes
Yes.
along the Williams property? Because that's been a concern of mine to see how they dug out right up to their property line. And that's, so it can be 0 lot line?
It's a 5-foot buffer.
Okay.
5-foot setback.
Along perpendicular to
Yes, we're
Edgewood.
back towards, along this line here. This drawing is not a fair representation of what was actually occurred.
Is anyone not okay with Todd making the decision?
No, I'm good with it. In fact, I think I like the alternative. It looks a little bit more like the character of the neighborhood
Absolutely.
than
Instead of
the
institutional.
original one. I think it fits in a whole lot better. So I think it's improved.
And have they submitted any plans for their, for lack of a better word, I don't know what Catholics call it, the parsonage?
Not sure.
Because that's when they tore a house down on Edgewood that's supposed to be built back. I mean, on Wigington, yes.
They know they're gonna, they know they have to go back. So that was part of the deal, to retain the residential fabric along there. And they had not split that.
That brings up a question about that, and then the Hunter Avenue building and all of that is the construction parking, because they've been very intrusive with the Catholic church parking, and they've destroyed parts of the sidewalk along Edgewood. And I've often wondered why they didn't come around and pull in those driveways.
Are you talking about the
I'm talking about
construction
the
for the
Catholic church.
Bixby?
No, I'm talking about the Catholic church right now.
Oh, they're having construction right now? Okay, I'll go
Oh,
over
yeah,
there. And
big time. They just built a whole new sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you need to ride over there.
I
Let me put you
do.
in the car and ride you around.
Yeah, come
There's a
walk.
lot of stuff going on out there.
All these places out.
Come walk with me one day. I'll show you.
Okay.
But I've noticed that in terms of safety and walking, there's no sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. And while they have a little area right beside the old church that says no parking, but everything between there and the Williams house, there's always cars parked, and I have to walk out in the street.
Do we need to
With my
visit
dog.
this because of what she's saying?
Do we what?
Need to visit it officially through the planning commission because of what you're saying.
Well, I'm just worried about the same thing happening on Hunter Avenue if they bring all these big trucks and construction vehicles and workers and park all along Hunter Avenue. That's not going to be a very
That's
good
not gonna
situation for that neighborhood.
This is the first I've heard that the Catholic Church is in any way blocking sidewalks and forcing people to walk the street. If that's the case, I appreciate it if you
Okay.
happens again, because we implemented a site management program for all major projects, and the Catholic Church signed an agreement. And one of the things that we stipulate, primary is that no sidewalks or roadways can be blocked without written permission from the police department, because there's sometimes we have to. But no construction is definitely, so if that ever occurs, they are in violation.
Oh,
And
that's
then
good.
they get 2 warnings and then we close the bank.
Okay.
And it's been really quiet. So either you've been very patient, or we were assuming that there weren't a lot of issues because we usually hear about it when we do, if there are. But we've been very good to work with. That's one of the areas where we're not very forgiving on. So please let us know if you want to do that problem. I tell you,
Okay.
So
And we probably ought to reassure the Hunter Avenue folks of the
Yes.
same thing, that you don't tolerate that, so make sure that they let you know.
well, you've got next meeting to do that, right? All right, so,
And that was something I meant to bring up tonight.
President, we've already, we shut down the code. And we stopped the board, and sent everybody on. They just get their attention.
yeah,
We don't want it to. But
okay.
but we haven't had a problem since that.
Super. So can we get to 8?
I'm sorry.
Planning Commission representation at council meetings. We've got a hearing on the 19th, is that right?
The hearing is on R1A, and that same night will be the first reading of the strategic plan ordinance. So there are 2 issues that the planning commission has recently taken action.
All right, who is dying to represent us? And really, if you can just be aware of how we voted, remind yourself, maybe look at the meeting, and then be a resource. I listened to the first public hearing for the PD issue of making the
Removing the 2-acre minimum.
right, but they visited the whole issue really, and I guess I was uncomfortable saying anything because it's time for the public, and Todd introduced me as being there a couple of times, and like.
I just wanted to make sure you had the opening.
Yes, and you did. But no one called on me. So I was there. That's all I can say. So I would love to share that experience with someone else. For the,
I'm planning on it.
okay, so Elaine, you're going, and you were there that night anyway.
Yeah, there was one that they asked me to
That was
speak.
the one where you need clarification on that language about.
That's right.
Yeah, in or surrounded by, yeah.
Okay.
So that's at 5:30 on the 19th,
That's correct.
and then council is at 6 or 6:30.
6:30, correct. And the agenda should be, if it's not.
It's just posted, I think,
It's just it.
this afternoon.
Alrighty, so update on strategic plan implementation committees. Would you say that we already covered that one? Check that off? Anybody? Okay. Future workshops and other events. So it's usually the fourth Thursday, and I'm fourth. Fourth Tuesday. Thank you. I'm not even sure I'll be here. We're still trying to get the in-laws.
I don't think there's anything, I'm not aware of there'll be a need for y'all.
Okay. All right. I feel like some things are getting bottlenecked in the future, but I can't. All we can do is all we can do. So, is there a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
I've got one
I've
quick question.
Sorry.
I've just got one quick question.
Okay.
Do we need to have a short vote to proceed with changing the rules of procedure to change the comments? Got to have been by close of business the day before the meeting. I mean, Todd says he's going to go ahead and change it.
Well,
Should
he's
we
going to
just-
do the verbiage because we have to wait 10 days. I'm sorry.
Well, I wasn't sure whether we wanted to start the 10-day tonight or whether we wait for because it'll be next month before we'll look at it again.
Exactly.
That's the reason I was asking.
You can't change the bylaws without notice, so we couldn't change it tonight.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I wasn't saying change them tonight. I was just saying we have a motion that we want to change. So we start the
That's what we're
procedure.
doing. We did.
Yeah, I don't think you need, I mean, it couldn't hurt, but, I plan to put it on the agenda, and y'all can vote on it next week.
And you can
Okay,
say
that's fine. I wasn't sure whether we wanted to vote tonight. I don't think
to move it.
I think it was going to happen, but just asking.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and you're the second?
No, actually.
Nathan?
Either one of us, doesn't matter. Let's,
We're going to give it to you, Nathan.
good, we're good.
We want you to look
It's
good
almost 8 o'clock.
for the public.
All in.
So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.